what is it like to be a professor with impact? Today, we are here with Professor Sharyn Rundle-Thiele.
Thank you, Park, and thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much for your time, and I'm very happy to have you here. So first question, how do you define impact?
Look, it's an excellent question. We recently did a whole heap of evidence review, and there are so many different definitions of impact. But let me be super clear. Impact is not a journal impact factor. It is when something has changed. And to put it in very simple terms, it's when outcomes accumulate. So by this, it's can you actually measure your work in such a way that there is no doubt, so it's beyond doubt, that the changes that are now occurring as a result of what you've done are a direct result of your actual work. So to put it into context, like many people know that for quite some years now, I've been working on koalas and conservation. And what impact looks like is a reduction in koala deaths. For that to happen, a whole heap of other actions have to happen. So in other words, they start to stack up. And so it might be that more people around Southeast Queensland report koala sightings, slow down when driving, or keep their dogs sleeping inside at night and have them trained to avoid a koala. So all of those behaviours are happening for the reductions in hospitalisation to occur.
Yes, and I noticed that your koala campaign, actually, I noticed a few campaign about dog biting the koala and all that. And I think if I can recall correctly, I have seen some ad about every site that we see the koala that report is count. And I think what you're saying here is that impact is not just an impact factor, but it's also social impact, how business, how community can use those research to change things in the real life and all that. I think that is really good. Can we explore more in terms of how you and your team might create and build impact?
So for me, impact is something that takes time. If you look at a case study that we ran with Redland City Council, it actually took us 3.5 years to get the data from a hospital to demonstrate that our Leave It program had actually worked. And for us, that was a really important learning because for years we'd been capturing outcomes, but what we didn't know for sure was, is this actually making a true difference? So impact does, take time.
Yes, yes. And I also noticed your recent campaign in the Sunshine Coast as well in terms of the rubbish recycle e-waste that I have seen on the internet, and then your team that went out to the field very recently is look really interesting. Talking about that, to me, I think you are a very good influencer in social change, in improving well-being and all other things. How do you start your journey as a good influencer?
Oh, look, if I go backwards and probably tell my own story, which for some might be a boring story, I knew I wanted to put my research to good use. Like I was employed by taxpayer funds to be working on research. It did take me a while to figure out what I wanted to be. And so in 2010, I had met social marketing and really understood that I could take marketing and I could apply it to support society and not just sell products and services. So that sort of started my journey. And then from there, I had to sort of build a reputation, get people to trust me. And I learned very early in all of this practice that proof of concept or a pilot study that demonstrates the positive effects are how you start to build trust. And by building trust, funds and money to do the work start to come. And so from there, that creates opportunities for other people and teams to be working with and for me, beside me, along next to me, to do all of that work. So when you look at that e-waste work, that's a current student who's just in the start of her second year. And I really strongly encouraged her to just go for it and try and do a pilot study in year one and put her research straight into work, because any marketer knows that we have to learn what people want. So you can use any of our research methods, whether it's evidence reviews to see who's done it where before, depth interviews, or some sort of design work to understand what people want to see. And you can just jump straight into action with that research, learn what people want, and then ultimately, again with research, ask them for feedback. What works? What's changed? If we measure them before and after, we get to see the measurable differences or not that have happened as a result of our work.
Sure. So I take that tips for creating an impactful work. First tips is to understand what is the needs and wants of the local community or international community, ask them and then fix some of the problem. What are some of the tips, like other tips for, say, myself or anyone who watching you want to start some other project or a new project that can create impact?
If you wanted to fast forward and fast track, my recommendation would be come and learn, come and watch how people do it. That could be just partnering into projects. We regularly have visitors at the centre. We've had 3 already this year who are just watching to understand what it takes. But obviously our work now is incredibly large scale. And it doesn't have to just be restricted to social. There are going to be some marketers there who do want to help companies be more efficient. They might want to help them be more socially responsible. They might want to understand, when I say about more efficient, how practices can be changed, products could be improved. And to some extent, I'm totally supportive of that, but I'm very much a strong advocate now for we can't afford to start not asking the proper questions, because human health is suffering, biodiversity is declining, and the planet needs some help. So if we can be a little bit more positive as a group of researchers, I think we can come a long way towards helping shape a future that, you know, we might want to leave to children and grandchildren and so on.
Yes, and the research center that you're referring to is social marketing at Griffith University. So if anyone want to, contact, in the description of the clips, I will have information for the center and for Sharyn as well. So if anyone interested there. Now, you have touched already in terms of building an impact will take a few years, as have to invest on a few things, just like the relationship that you have to build with your connection or industry collaboration. What are some of the tips on how to build connection and build trust with the people that you might be able to work with in terms of the industry?
It's a really good question, Park. I've seen some great examples over the career I've had of some researchers who took a decision and asked an organisation if they could just go and sit there for 1 day a week. And that just happened to be in the context of a cancer council. And by learning and sitting there and listening, they started to see what the problems or things that Cancer Council, what was important to Cancer Council. So that's one way of just saying, where could I start? Because rather than sitting from behind your computer or, in your own office or at home, sometimes by meeting people and really connecting with them deeply, that's where you can start to see what I would almost call the opportunity that you can actually take to start to work on a problem that maybe people haven't thought about. And that's probably marketing's edge. Like, we're very good at taking data and getting understanding, but a lot of my training was very much, if you've ever read The Purple Cow, that's one example. It's about getting outside of the box. And I think design thinking did a better job of marketing to the world than sometimes we do, because I think we get sort of lost in the trees and we kind of lose sight of the forest. But, it's easy level. Marketing is all about basically building solutions that people actually want. So partnering into an organisation would be one. Some of it may be connections that you've got, but I would always sort of probably encourage you to basically get outside of the current network and to continue to establish more relationships. And when I mean this, I mean not just with other marketers, but are you talking to environmental researchers, health researchers? And then outside of academia, are you talking to community organisation, charities, for-profits, and then ultimately governments, because you'll start to build, a very strong reputation that you can do something and make a difference.
That is a very great example, and marketing can work with other discipline in terms of the cross discipline. When we see them doing something really good, we can be there to help them to, in terms of supporting and also promoting their behavior change or some other viewpoint perspective of the customer perspective. So I think that is a very good point in terms of working with other discipline and then beyond from there. And just to touch on your point as well, you're saying go outside your network comfort zone. In this case, would you suggest people to apart from go to, let's say, academic conference, how do we get to know industry? Should we go to some of the industry conferences as well?
You absolutely should make an absolute effort to find a different tribe and don't expect you're always going to understand them. One of my closest colleagues that I work with and for at the moment often says, I have no idea what you're talking about, but they trust what we can do. And that's where I think the ultimate sort of real understanding of the power of what I'm going to call our social science and their harder sciences really start to come together. So, you know, recently, late last year, I was at a road conference.
Yes.
Now, who would ever think that a marketer would be asked to sort of stand and talk about roads? But that was the power of the work we've been doing for the koalas and their understanding that, you know, talking to humans and understanding the human dimension is an incredibly important part of environmental work. So we may change their practices. It might not be that we're the ones standing there always doing that work. But I think that's some of the power. And my very first public health conference taught me that for many, many disciplines, marketing is a dirty word. And if you don't know that yet, that tells me that you haven't got outside of the marketing tent enough.
Yes, well said there, and some great example that you talked about earlier. Now, if we were to touch on, say, a different point, from your perspective, what is your point of view about some people doing some research that have no clear social implication? Is it a wrong thing or is it a reasonable things to do?
Look, I had a colleague very recently who was working with me on impact. Basically, we've been working for months, and she said at the end in our last meeting, she said, Sharyn, you've made me question the research that I do. And I thought that was a really great point given to me. It pleased me and sort of warmed my heart a little bit, because I obviously personally care about trying to leave a better world behind than maybe I was born into. And I understand there's massive social disparities, power imbalances, and I get frustrated because I've now been working in social marketing since 2010 and I'm not seeing enough change fast enough. So I think it's on every individual now to question who you are and what you actually stand for. And yes, you might be very seduced by commercial capitalism that's run rampant and has definitely wreaked havoc on the planet. I don't mean to disparage your point of view, but at the same time, I've seen enough now in terms of social injustice, failure to close gaps on health, and just worsening, all the indicators across the environment worsening. So I think more of us, and I do love meeting young people who are looking to make it better. I really think it's incumbent on the academies to step out and really start to challenge the current business practices. And to do that, we have to be aware of, you know, just that simple fact that marketing used for, you know, encouraging more gambling or problematic substance use, you know, is that really where we should be? And should that even be in our standards of ethical practice?
Exactly. Motivate children to eat fast food, tobacco, and all sorts of things there. So that is kind of like the dark side of marketing. So I'm really with you there, and I hope that even for myself, future research on myself, hopefully there will be more social implication that we can see. Now, if I were to build more on the theoretical implication aspect, I have heard a number of good people saying that you have gave some good talk in a number of conferences, and I just want to build on some of those. Like, do we always need to aim to have? So maybe first question is maybe what is theoretical implication, and do we always need to aim to have a theoretical implication in a research project?
Yeah, Park, it's probably been the biggest word that's been thrown at me right across the span of my career. So since that moment where I decided I wanted to do social marketing, I would hear feedback that, you know, it's low quality research, it's, you know, it's not this. And this was from my own academy sometimes. And it might have frustrated me a bit at the time, but you'll also see that I've been writing on theory over time, and I've probably got a very positivist background. I am a bit of a hard scientist at heart, even though I'm doing people science. And for me, I think a lot of our theory development, it needs to be replicated. We need to be able to demonstrate for sure it holds across settings, instances, time. And I'm not sure that our theory discussions are always doing that. So most recently with a colleague, Dr. Taylor Wilmot, we looked at levels of theory use, and that work's now about 5 years old. And she looked at 17 different ways theory can actually be applied directly. And I would like to see us hit higher levels of theory use before we start to make sort of conclusions about whether theory is useful and practical or not. So I love to test theories. I love to do it at the highest level we can manage in practice. But the theories themselves don't then always fit to the practice that I do. So for me, if I read some of our most brightest A-star papers, or Q1 journal papers, many of them for me, I can tell would not work in practice. And I would like to have more of the academy delivering research that practitioners can use. And that to me would be our measure of success. Like medicine does it. Their doctors read their top medical journals and it instantly influences practice. I'm not sure we've got that happening enough still across our academy.
Sure. And I thank you so much for the background speech that just now. I'm with you as well. And I noticed I have seen your koala work in the EJM recently. And I think that is written very well, and it show what industry and business and actually normal people like us can actually take approach in terms of that. I hope we will see more of those type of papers and research coming out. Now, when it's come to the last question, which is if you could go back in time, what will be some of the suggestion or one suggestion you would like to tell your younger self?
Oh, I love this question. I think it's such a good one because it is easy to look backwards. I think just to be more patient. I was very impatient as a young academic, wanted to get everything done yesterday and be there. And I understand today that trust, it's hard to earn and very easy to lose. So working, well, finding great colleagues, keep the ones that really make you laugh, you have a bit of fun along the way, or just they work as hard as you. These would be some of my best tips. And I think the real final one is just go in softly. Don't promise the world. I today meet people who I've never worked with before. And what I usually suggest is, how about we do a little project together and decide if we actually like working together before you commit yourself to 3, 5, 10 years of absolute chaos. So I think just be kind. It all comes in time. And the final bit of advice I would give is go find your thing. Like if you can actually care about it and be passionate about it, then you can actually stick with it for time. And those that have built the strongest reputations in marketing across time have pretty much just talked about their one sort of thing. So you might not have found it yet. That's perfectly okay. If you look at my very earliest papers, they were not social marketing. I did fiddle around a bit until I actually found my thing, but then I haven't really changed course since.
Yes, such a great suggestion in terms of going to find your space that you really passion and you want to build, from there. And I also love the way you're saying, get to taste the water, to taste it, to see who do you want to work with before you commit to the long-term relationship. Because, although two great people, they might be great individual, but sometimes when they come together, it may or may not work out. So thank you so much for your time. And this is what is it like to be a professor with impact with Professor Sharyn Rundle-Thiele. Thank you so much, Sharyn, for your time today.
You're welcome, Park. Thanks again for having me.
Thank you.